Hello, my name is Lee Taylor, and I really like to knit, so much so that some of my friends call me the Knitwit. I hope you enjoyed today's video and possibly even learned something. So let's get started. Hello and welcome to Knit Bits number 21. I have lots in store for you. We're going to be doing a chit-chat about cables. We're going to be doing a Swatch Lab about cables. I've got project updates. I want to talk about what happened last week and about some stuff in the future. We are going to be working this episode in a slightly different order than what we normally do. So stay tuned and let's have some fun with cables this week. First off this week, we're actually going to have our chit-chat topic up front. I do want to do it this way so I can talk about cables and then dive into what cables, how they're actually done. So first off, let's talk about what cables are. I have some information down here, so I may glance down to it from time to time. So just be aware of that. So cables are, when you're knitting fabric, and let's say my fingers are stitches, when you're knitting fabric and you come to, say, these two stitches and these two stitches, cables move stitches across the fabric. So these two stitches may cross in front of these others, so you still have the same number of stitches, they're just in a different order, and that creates a 3D effect. It sounds more complicated than it actually is in practice, although getting some muscle memory and becoming very good at cables, like anything, practice makes perfect. But the overall concept of cables is a lot easier done than said. It's one of those reverse deals. Basically, just know that cables are moving stitches across fabric. We are working on extremely simple cables here. We will do more in-depth on cable stuffs in a future video, but right now I just wanted to cover the bare basics. I've mentioned cables a few times, and I just wanted to do a little starter episode on cables. I have no intentions of making a series back to back to back of cables. We're just going to talk about them. So for me personally, I see cables in two different varieties. There are the band cables and the rope cables. And I do have examples of both of those, some that I have knit, as well as I have some pictures of different cables that I just got off the internet, and I'll punch those in this segment right here. Now, when it comes to band cables versus rope cables, like I said, I do, those in my mind are the two separate varieties. They are worked relatively similar, but let's flip to the overhead and take a look at what these are, as well as, okay, so let me just back up. There's two types of cables in my mind, band and rope. So in the overhead, we're going to go over what a band and a rope is in my definition, as well as what a mock cable is. We're not swatching mock cables. I'm just showing you examples of all three. So let's switch over to the overhead and take a look at those three items. So in our chit-chat section, I talked about there's different types of cables and what those are, and I'd like to talk about the definitions of mine. So first off, we have band cables. And what a band cable to me is a cable that lays relatively flat. See that? I mean, it's raised from the fabric because it's going to be, because it's a 3D form of knitting. However, it lays relatively flat. And even if it's not super wide, it still is laying flat. So here is an example of that. And then this is acrylic worsted weight, one of the first cables that I worked on. I just blocked this with just a hairdryer. And then here is a band cable from Chicken Lady Fiber Arts. It is her fingering, a fingering line, or a fingering weight yarn. And this is also a band cable. It lays relatively flat to the fabric itself. Again, cables are 3D, but this lays relatively flat. Our next type of cable, in my mind, is a rope cable. And to me, that is exactly what it looks like. It looks like ropes traveling on this. Now, it could be as frequent as this, and it could just be one line just crisscrossing and wrapping around. But compared to the fabric, you know, here's the groove of it. It actually stands pretty proud. And another thing that rope cables do is they look the same on both sides. The pattern is the same, whereas on band cables, the wrong side looks nothing like the right side. You know, if you're wearing this in a sweater, you're never going to see that, but if you're knitting a scarf, for example, you may think about going with a rope cable. Rope cables will have their own video. Today we're going to focus on band cables. Now then, these are the two types of true cables. We also have an example from last week's swatch video, or last swatch video, of a mock cable. It looks similar to a cable, but it is different. It is slightly 3D, but it is not worked like a cable, and so it's not a true cable. It gives the appearance of a true cable or of a cable without being a cable, thus mock, as in fake. So those are the three types of cables. You have, in my mind, my definition, band cables, rope cables, and then a look-alike cable or a mock cable, but is not a true cable, but looks very similar. If you don't want to fight with a regular cable, you have a lot of different options on mock cables. All cables, whether true or mock, there are a myriad of different ways of doing them. There are a myriad of different patterns to do them. So hopefully this kind of clears up when I'm talking about cables. If I mention a band cable, I'm talking about this. If I'm mentioning a rope cable, it's talking about this. And a mock cable is talking about something like this, where it looks similar, but it's not in fact a true cable. So those are the different types. 9 times out of 10 when I'm knitting, I'm going to be using a mock cable. This is what I learned first. This is what came natural to me. But the more and more I do them, I prefer the rope cable. I like that really bold and obvious. However, having said that, there is something nice about a subtle band cable in certain applications. Each one have different applications, and each one has different times that you might choose to do them. So whether it's band cables, rope cables, or mock cables, you have options. In our Swatch Lab this week, we are going to be doing some cables. I am doing 2/2 cables, and that means 2 stitches are crossing over 2 stitches. 1/1 are easier, but they're, in my mind, they're a little bit more fiddly than 2/2. It's, for me, it's like using brand new crayons like those, if you had those growing up, the really big crayons. In my mind, it's easier to get used to using something bigger and then work your way down. So I'm doing 2/2 cables, both towards the left as well as towards the right. And I just wanted to go over some of those and show you some different options on how you can cross those, but it's crossed the exact same way in all of those. So let's hop over to the overhead and take a look on how to work 2/2 cables, both to the left and to the right. In today's Swatch Lab, we're going to be doing 2/2 cables, and I have a couple of different things to show you. First up, I'm going to try and show you without showing the whole thing here. So I'm just going to use the back of this notebook to hide what I don't want you to see yet. So first off, I just knit a garter stitch bottom and garter stitch sides. Cables tend to pull in fabric. So on this swatch, I increased some stitches. And so that way I would, when the cables pull in fabric, because when the two cables are crossing over, they're being stretched. Well, yarn stretches, but it still wants to kind of pull back to where it's normally at. So that causes the fabric to shrink up. Which sometimes is exactly what you're wanting. That's the feature you're wanting, along with something aesthetic. So first of all, I increased, and then I did the very first cable crossing. I don't know if that's super visible, but see how this one crosses over to the left, and this one crosses over to the right, at least in the way that I'm filming, looking this way. It may be reversed on the screen. So I just did one straight off the bat. Then I knit a plain wrong side, and then I knit a plain right side, plain wrong side, and then when I come back to the right side, I did another cross. This one's more obvious. See how that is crossing again to the left this way and the right this way. Then I worked a plain wrong side, and then I knit a instant cable, which shrunk those up together, which gives you a totally different look. This kind of has a coin or medallion, and this is just very close. This can be very useful, and all of them have different uses and different purposes. It's just dependent on what you're wanting and what the pattern calls for. But I just wanted to show some different examples. This is every other right side row. This is every right side row. Pull this down, and next we have, I did another every other right side row to show how it would look if you framed every right side between every other. Then I worked every third right side row. So there's quite a few stitches in between before it crosses yet again. Immediately after that, when I worked the next one, I worked the cables going the opposite direction, which made it extremely 3D and very small, and absolutely can be done. I particularly don't like it. So then I worked another going in that direction. So here we have to the rights, and here we have to the rights, here we have to the lefts, and here we have to the lefts. And then I worked to the right again where the cable crossed on top both times, and that's what that looks like. So those are some different. I'm now ready to where I can work another cable, and so that is what we are going to do together. We're going to work another cable. Tools you will need for this Swatch Lab are yarn, a pair of knitting needles, whether it's circular, DPN, straights. You'll need some knitting needles, and then you'll need a notion that I don't believe we've talked about on the show, because I was saving them for this topic. You need some sort of cable needle. I've got them here in this little box. Okay, so a cable needle may look like this. This is a paper clip, but I've bent it in the shape of a regular cable needle. It may look like this. You can also use a double pointed needle. Here I have my short little 5 inches. You can use a toothpick. You can use a locking stitch marker. You can cable without a cable needle, but it is more advanced than what this is. It is more fiddly, and I don't trust myself to do it, so I am not showing you that. This is the basics. This is cable basics. So you will need some form of other item. You could also use a chopstick or a yarn wand if you wanted to. But my personal preference is this short double pointed needle, but I will be showing you the double pointed needle and working it. I will be showing you the cable needle. I'm not showing you this one because this is just a paper clip and I don't want to damage my yarn with the sharp, potential sharp points on either end. So that's going away for now. That rolled away from me. I can show you how to use a toothpick as a cable needle and how you can use a locking stitch marker, but we are not using either of those in our actual swatch. This one will be working in on ones that tilt to the left. This one we will use when we are going to the right, just so you can see the different ways of using them. So first off, let's grab our swatch. I have cast on some stitches here. Let's see here. We've got 3 for the selvages, so there's 6 total for there. So 3, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 22, 24. That gives us 6 for selvage, 6 for this band, 4 for our cables because we're doing 2 over 2, so we need a total of 4 stitches, and then 4 stitches in between, so that way they're far enough apart that it's very easy to see what's going on. So let's get started. First off, for some reason I ended this on the wrong side, so I'm going to pause this video and knit across to the right side. I do not like starting from the wrong side, so just a moment. Okay, so I've worked across the wrong side. I don't know what come over me to leave it on that way. So let's go ahead and work our cable crossing. This one is going to cross to the, sorry, I'm off screen. This one here is going to cross to the left. This one here is going to cross to the right. So let's take a look and see how we work that. So first off, we're going to knit our selvages. I mixed that up, but that's okay. We're going to knit 3 stitches. And let's see here. Get our selvage, and we knit a selvage so that way the edges don't curl up and then we can't see what it is we're working on. So we knit our 3 selvages. Now we need to purl 3 stitches because cables show up better when on a background of pearls, or also called reverse stockinette. So you do your purls, so your cables are islands in a sea of pearls, if you want to think about it that way. So we need to purl 3 stitches, so we bring our yarn to the front, and we are going to purl 3 stitches, 2, and 3. And I'm actually going to move my yarn down here to where it's a little bit easier to use, so just bear with me a moment. Okay, now then, someone asked if I could show how I work or put the yarn onto my hand, so I'm going to zoom out for that here. I'm going to zoom out a bit so I can show you that. So what I do is I grab the yarn like this, okay, and then I take it around my hand like so, crisscross my hand so it does like this, and then I use my pinky to pick up that tail so it crisscrosses like so, and then I usually, you know, put it where it lies like that. That is how I hold my yarn to tension it. That is not the only way to do it. There are a ton of different ways. I know people who don't tension at all. The yarn just hangs there and they pick it up and knit it. Lots of different ways of doing things, but that is how I do mine. So let's zoom back down here and take a look at how we're going to work this cable. Okay, again, this first cable here, these 4 stitches here, are going to change place. These 2 stitches are going to be over here, and these 2 stitches are going to now be over here. Knitting magic, and it's a wonderful thing. So I'm going to cross to the left. So now what we need to do is we need to pick up some form of cable needle. And again, we're going to the left, so we're going to use our double pointed needle here. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this needle, get this one out of our way, and we're going to pick up these 2 stitches, slip these onto this needle as if to purl it. Okay, just like that. Okay, we're going to pick up 2 of them, just like that. Okay, so we now have 2 on our spare needle and these 2 over here. Now they need to change places. So what we're going to do is when you're working to the left, a cable to the left, slide your stitches over here to the middle, and it's going to hold in front, and it's just going to hang out right there, and we're not going to do anything more with them right now. Okay, now we need to knit these 2 stitches. So we're going to pick up our regular needle again, tension our yarn, pick up our regular needle, and we're going to knit these 2 stitches. We're going to ignore these, knit these 2 stitches. Okay. Oh, make sure you take your yarn to the back before you knit, otherwise you make an inverted yarn over. Okay, so knit 1, knit 2. Okay, and you can see our next stitch is a purl, so we have worked our last of our knits. So these have now changed places. Now then, you have a couple of options when it comes to working this. You can, 1, slide these back onto this needle and then knit them again. So you can slide them back on, like so, and then knit them, or you can leave them on your needle and knit off of the needle, which is what I just do it this way. It's much easier on this. When I'm working other styles of cables, I will slip them back over to here, but it just depends on what you're working on. And then you're just going to knit these 2 stitches off of this cable needle. And it is going to be a bit snug because, again, they're being pulled out, so some of the slack is being pulled out, and that makes them a little bit snug, which is what causes that fabric to want to pucker and come in. It can be blocked out to a point though, so don't worry. We have now done a 2/2 crossing to the left, and you can already see it on your deal. If you hold it like this, see how this looks like it comes under these other stitches? Well, that's because that's exactly what's happening. When they trade places, some are crossing over other stitches. Okay? Now we're going to work these 4 purl stitches, and then we're going to do a right crossing 2/2 cable right here. And what 2/2 means is 2 stitches are crossing over 2 other stitches, whether it be crossing over like this or over like this. These 2 are going over 2. So now we need to purl. So let's get our yarn in front to purl and purl these stitches. If you are interested in knitting a fisherman's gansey or an Aran sweater, A-R-A-N, you will need to learn how to cable, because cables are an integral part in that. You can't have an Aran sweater, even if knit with Aran weight yarn, without cables. It's just one of the stipulations of it. Okay, now we are to our next 4 knit stitches, and we're going to cable these with these 2 stitches right here, crossing in front of these 2 stitches right here. Okay, and that will make it cross to the right. So how we do that is we grab our other cable needle, which we're using this one, which is a very common one. It's not my favorite because it's a little bit fiddly, but it is safer, and I'll show you why. So what we're going to do is we're going to drop our working needle. We don't need that, but let's go ahead and take the yarn to the back, because I have a tendency to forget that. So we're going to slip these 2 stitches purlwise onto this needle, okay, which is very simple to do. You can do it one at a time, or you can go in and grab both. Okay, we're just going to slip them off. Now then, the good feature with this is this slides like this, and then you let go of it, and it sits there and dangles, and then they can't slip off. Whereas there is a possibility of it doing that just on this, although the longer the needle, the less likely that happens, but it can happen. So this is a good alternative needle. So now we want these to cross over these. So if we held this in front and knit, it'd be crossing behind. So we don't want to do that. We want to take this and put it to the back of our work like this, okay? Like so, okay? Let it just kind of hang out back here. and now we knit these stitches, these 2 stitches. We're going to knit these. You can work cables where you knit and purl, but again, this is cable basics and we're only working on knit stitches. Okay, we have worked those 2 stitches and we can tell that because we are now at our purl bumps. So now we need to work these stitches from the back. And this is why I think this is a little fiddly, is we get this pulled around here and then trying to hold this so that way it is easy to knit. I don't like doing that. So what I do when I'm working a right crossing cable is I will take and put the stitches back on the original needle. It just feels a lot more secure, and you're just going to slip those back on the same way like you would be purling. Okay, so you're going to take your needle, come in through like so. Okay, just like you would purl. You're just going to come in and pick up those legs. I pick them up both at the same time, and you're just going to pick those back up. I put my finger here to hold and just slide that needle out of the way. Okay, and put it down. We are done with that for right now. Now then, these stitches are back on the needle, and so we are going to now knit those. You have now cabled twice. Here we have 2 over 2 going to the left, and here we have 2 over 2 going to the right. Now we're going to purl our stitches. 1, 2, and 3. End with our 2 knits, or our 3 knits. 1, 2, 3. Now when working the wrong side of the cable, which I'm not going to show you how to do, but I will walk you through it. On the wrong side of the cable, you are going to work them as they present. These are going to be knits, knits. The cable stitches are going to be purls, knits, purls, knits, so on and so forth. So you work them as they present, okay? That is how you do 2 over 2 cables. This one crossed to the left, you slip it onto the needle and hold in front. This one crosses to the right, you slip onto a needle of some sort and you hold it to the back. Next week I will show you how you can use these other methods of holding your stitches. Or not next week, when we do our next set of cables, whenever that is, but it will not be next week. But that is how you cable stitches. Let's take a look at the project updates segment. We're going to be taking a look at school socks, Mitts Informed. We're going to be taking a look at 2 separate projects for donations. And we are also going to talk about this shawl right here behind me. It is not a project that I have done recently, but it is one that I wanted to talk about. I dislike when people in their videos, they have something like this and then they don't tell you anything about it. I want to, if you've had thought put up to put something there, talk about it. So that's what I'm going to do in this one. We're going to talk a little bit about this one and where you can get the pattern to knit up for yourself. So let's get started. First up, let's take a look at school socks. This will not be an overhead feature, just because there's really not a whole lot to show, but I am going to talk about them. Here's what I have. Get up close here. You can see here I changed to the foot portion, and here I have done 10 rows. So it's almost time to do another marker. But what is cool about this is now back to where I was before I frogged it and restarted, so I could do the princess sole all the way from the very tip with the toe. So that is my update on the school socks. I do work that as anytime I'm away from the house, I work on that. Sometimes if company comes over and I'm still wanting to knit and chit-chat, but I don't want to have a huge project on me, I will knit the school socks. But that is what I have as update for school socks. Next up, let's take a look at Mitts Informed. I cannot show you the actual finished project, but I do have them done because the recipient watches this. This is not a Christmas gift. This is a birthday gift. But I can show you, this is how much yarn I have left over. And I have some stats on Mitts Informed, which I have over here on my monitor. So let me just glance over and give you the stats on that. First off, I finished the second mitt November 16th, and I used 28 grams to do that, which was, let's see here, it was 4 grams less than the first mitt. I have no idea what happened with that. It all come out to the same dimensions. Who knows? Math and me and knitting don't always mix, so I just kind of go with it. Let's see here. I still have 46 grams of this, which is 98 yards or 89.6 meters. And I already have a special project in mind for this. It is also a birthday gift for the exact same recipient. More on that in a future video. But I did get both mitts done. I do still need to block all of my gift knits. So I'm looking forward to doing that here relatively soon. Gonna go off on a tangent for a second. One of my gift knits, one of the Three Sisters gnomes, got mailed out, and the recipient, my Aunt Bertha, got it this morning and sent me a picture of where it's going to set at her house. And like I mentioned in last week's video, I believe it was, at the end of the year, my very last video is just going to be a montage and picture of all of the gift knits, whether Christmas or birthday, and hopefully the recipient wearing or holding it, and if not, at least where it's going to set at their house. So look for that. That will be the very last episode of this year, as well as the very last episode of Season 1. So stay tuned for all of that. Next up, I'm going to talk about 2 different projects, but they fall under the same umbrella. Mom's office this year has adopted a family for some Christmas gifts. And one of the recipients is a newborn that's supposed to arrive in January. And I got delegated in to knit up some gifts for them. So there's also a 6-year-old boy, so there's going to be 2 kids. And these next 2 episodes, or next 2 bits in this episode, I should say, is going to be talking about some gift knitting that's a little bit more special. So first off, we're going to be taking a look at the hat I knit for the newborn, which is this. It is the exact same pattern and hat as Mom's hat, which I've got right here. Because real life, I didn't think ahead to get this. So here's Mom's hat. And here is newborn's hat. Same exact yarn, so Mom and little girl can match. And on the little girls, I wanted to do a pom-pom. And, did my usual method. But for some reason, maybe because this is fingering and I didn't have quite the same amount, it did not turn into a pom-pom. So what I did instead is I did a tassel. And it looks like a little ponytail. So this is the little girl's hat. I don't know what her name is, but I do know that her and Mama are going to look very stylish together. This is knit with, in the slingshot method, which, let me take a moment to talk about that. Slingshot method is the name that I have named it. I did not invent this. I simply gave it something to name so I can put down in my notes and make it easier to talk about. But I did not invent the way of doing that. I will post a link down below of a video by Barbara Benson, which is where I learned it from. And she in turn learned it off of TikTok and links that video in her description as I from what I understand. But I use the slingshot method with this. It's knit with the same yarn and is cushy merino speckled in the colorway Thistle. So this hat is Thistle Keep You Warm. Sorry, I had a notification come up on my phone. This hat is Thistle Due for a Hat. Mom's is Thistle Due for Hat. This is Thistle Keep You Warm. I did use the slingshot method. This is a fingering weight yarn, and I used a 6mm or a US 10. Let's see here. I've got notes over here on the side. I did a 1x1 rib hat, and I cast on 54 stitches for that. And then when I got to the body, I increased 6 stitches. So I've got 60 stitches here. And used 44 grams, which is 167 yards, or 152.7 meters in Thistle Keep You Warm. So I just thought that was a cool little thing where it just, by sheer happenstance, I had enough scraps from Mom's yarn to knit the little girl's yarn, but I ended up using every last bit of it with this. So there's Thistle Keep You Warm with the little fake ponytail tassel. I don't have a video on how to make tassels. I didn't look at a video on how to make tassels. I just kind of winged it. You know, I have a saying, I'm just like a buffalo and I just wing it. And I just kind of fiddled with it and did what I thought would work out. It is superwash wool, so she will be able to wash it, and I will put instructions in there to wash it and then dry it flat. Especially since there's this tassel, that would be kind of tricky to mess with in a dryer anyways. So pretty easy care instructions for this. It's not my usual acrylic for baby hats or for children hats, but none of my acrylic was really soft enough, and the fact that it was matching made it worth it. So that is Thistle Keep You Warm. Next up is my current work in progress, and it is another gift for the family that my mom's office adopted for the Christmas season, and it's for a 6-year-old boy. And I was thinking, what, because you know I have to name everything funky and fun and just make it more enjoyable for myself. So I was thinking, what questions would a 6-year-old boy ask? And I was trying to remember when I was 6, what are some questions that I would have asked? And 2 come to mind. First off, how tall am I? And second off, how fast can I run? The second one often was time me as I run from here to there and back again, and time me. And the adult was supposed to say a number vastly lower than what it actually was. But I did not want to knit socks for a little kid. I barely am knitting socks for myself, and I wasn't going to try and figure out the average foot size because that changes so quickly in kids. So I didn't want to do that. So I didn't want to do how fast can I run. So I thought, how tall am I? So what better thing for how tall am I than a hat? I'm knitting this on double points, as you can see, 4.5 millimeters, or that would be a US 7. Is that right? You know, I would have thought to have looked this up first. Yes, a US 7 is a 4.5 millimeter. It is bunched up. It's not that small in person. I am doing it from the crown down because I don't have a whole lot of yarn, and I am knitting this hat on a hope and a prayer that I actually have enough yarn. This is scrapped yarn from my grandfather's Wave at the Navy hat. Also a superwash wool, so she can wash it and then lay it flat to dry, so very easy care. I only have a marker on my start of round needle. I don't want to mess with it on double points here at the end, so I just put it in the middle of the needle. Let's see here. I started this on November 16th, which is the day that I finished Thistle Keep You Warm. I cast on immediately after. And this is what's left of the Cascade 220 Super Wash in the colorway blue-green, which again was from Wave at the Navy, the scrap left over. And again, I'm not sure if there is enough because there is like 44 grams total for this. And my grandfather's hat took 66, but that hat was larger. So this only has 90 stitches, so I'm hoping that will help make it smaller, and using small needles. So we will see. I will knit this down. I went online and found a guesstimate of head circumference as well as the height, and I will post a picture of that here. And that is the rubric that I'm going off of on knitting this hat. I'm getting close, and like I said, we'll see. If it works out, great, and if not, there's other options I can do. I could always do the brim in a different color. This is just the yarn tail. But I could do the brim in a different color and hopefully do that. But it's, I just thought that would be a cool little hat. They had asked for a hat for the newborn, but they didn't mention a beanie hat. For the boy, they mentioned just a ball cap. But kids need hats, especially in the cold, and because they don't want to wear a hat when they go out, and they need a hat to keep their little ears warm, as we all do. And so I just thought that would be a cool little hat. And if you recall, when I did Wave at the Navy, I was going to try and knit up something to see how the rest of this colorway played out. And so this is my way of doing that. So it's twofold, mostly donation though. And when it comes to donation knits, they always jump to the front of the line, and all other works in progress are put on the back burner, which is why I'm trying to do that. They need everything by December 14th. This will be done in plenty of time for that. That way, if I decide I want to knit them each another hat, I do have yarn in my stash to be able to do that, so we will see. But I wanted to make sure I got those done, so all of my other gift knitting will be done after all of this is done. So stay tuned for more of that. In the last segment, where we are going to do a little bit of chit-chat, I want to first off mention about this shawl behind me. This is the beginner diagonal shawl, and it's just a triangle shaped, but it's worked on the bias. Starts at this little point here. This was designed by Nancy Queen, also known as Noble Knits. And I have a link down below on all of the information on that from her Ravelry page, her blog page, as well as the YouTube video that actually teaches you how to do this. So if you are unable to use Ravelry, you have two other sources to be able to do that. So take a look at that down there. This shawl I finished way back in February of this year. So it obviously didn't fit with project updates, but I did want to mention this particular shawl. I was so pleased with this pattern. I have actually knit two more of this shawl. One other is in the same colorway, but the color pattern plays out in a different order. And the other one I used a vastly different yarn. So definitely worth going and taking a look at that. Super simple. You need to know 2 stitches to knit the shawl, and that is it. Super simple and a lot of fun, and a good way of learning beginning shawl shape design. So take a look at that. Next up, I want to talk about what happened last week. I did decide to treat myself and take last week's video off. There was a lot of stuff that happened last week, and I'd like to talk about it. 98% of it was good. The other bit was just I'd overworked doing all of the good and needed an extra break, so I took a break because real life comes first. And so last week I decided to move around my filming area. You notice now you can see more of kind of the background here. I was able to shift my yarn stash over, which allowed me to be able to film more without seeing all of the gunk that happens off screen that nobody needs to see that. I don't need to see that. I really need to sit down and clean. But that's not the point. The point is I have a new filming table / desk and a new, to me, desktop computer, which is the monitor I mentioned is over here off to the side. It is going to make filming vastly more enjoyable for me, and hopefully better quality for you. The table is more sturdier than my previous 2 filming tables. It is actually a dining room table that my brother made and my mother stained. Part of it is actually welded, so it's a very sturdy, strong table. As for the monitor, it is a HP Windows 7, which is a few generations back, but everything on there is what I used when I first got started really using a computer often. And when I was working on writing my book, I used Windows 7, so I know how that particular Microsoft Office works, and I really like this one much better than the current stuff. So that is going to be nice. And actually starting next year with season 2, when it starts, I will be using that monitor to actually edit and upload my video. So you will notice some slight transition differences and different things, so be aware for that. I did not want to do that halfway through the season or partway through. I don't like when, you know, you're doing something video wise and then all of a sudden the main theme of the video, you know, the transitions and the title pages and all that, I don't like when that vastly changes. That just, it messes with me. So I didn't want to do that. So starting next season, there will be some different stuff, as well as a brand new intro. Now that I have my tooth, I will be doing a new intro. Again, wanted to wait until season 2 to do that. And so there was a lot going on last week, rearranging my office space. I have a bedroom that actually is 2 different rooms, and we tore the middle wall down. So this half is office space, and this half got rearranged drastically. So there was a lot going on, too much to do, and then trying to film. Would have been trying to do everything on Friday, and that weirds me out because I want to have everything done by Friday, so that way you can upload on Saturday. That way if there's any mix-up, I have a day buffer. And so I didn't want to do that and be stressed out and not enjoy my video, because if I'm not enjoying my video, how can you? Because I don't want to do this all deadpan and gruff and grumpy. So that's what happened last week. So starting from now on, the videos will be coming out more in order like they are supposed to be. To wrap up this week's Knitbits, we took a look at, we did a Chit-Chat with cables, we did a Swatch Lab with cables, and we looked at some project updates, the school socks, Mitts Informed, This'll Keep You Warm, How Tall Am I? We talked about why there wasn't a video last week. We talked about what this shawl here behind me is, as well as where to find the information. And as usual, all the links will be down below the description. There'll be the description of the video, the timestamps, and then below that is the links to everything that I mentioned in the video. When I say links down below, that's where to find those. So take a look at those. And I hope you enjoyed this week's video. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed yourself. And I really hope you come back for more. So that wraps up Knitbits number 21. So until next time, keep knitting.